Welcome back. This time we're talking about Legion, Season 2, Episode 2, Chapter 10. Now, following up the absolutely crazy season premiere, this episode was relatively straightforward and actually gave us a number of answers to the mysteries that we have. Now, because this is Legion, we can't actually trust most of these answers, and it also posed a lot of new questions as well. But a thoroughly enjoyable episode and really built on the premise and this new status quo that we were given in the season premiere and sets us off on our action for this season as a whole. The main crux of this episode is that David is indeed working with Farouk to help him find his body because that's what future Sid asked him to do. Now, where I'm most confused at this point is again that missing year, because as we see in his memory at the end of the season premiere, that was when he was in the orb right after he was taken, and so presumably for the entire year that has yet to be accounted for, he was willing to work with Farouk. But now in present, we see that he is actually actively working with Farouk. And part of this is because we still don't know for sure exactly where David was for that missing year. We know that he was on the top of a building in a forest, and then he was at the dance club and met with Farouk and Oliver at that time. And exactly how much time between the whole dance fight and when he was found by Tanami and Clark, we still don't know. But what we do know in this episode is that in the present, David is actively working with Farouk, and he creates a diversion, getting most of our main characters out of Division 3, so Farouk and Oliver can infiltrate looking for this monk, who may be the only person with the information on where Farouk's original body is. And of course, this infiltration had some lasting effects. First off, that Farouk kills a bunch of people, which went against what David wanted, and he also reverses the Carries. How he did this and what's ultimately going to happen remains to be seen, or even why, other than just for a sheer whim. But female Carrie seems to be having an adverse physical reaction to this, as we see at the end when her hair is turning white. Fortunately, David eventually comes clean to Sid, so we don't have this whole him lying to her thing hanging over our heads, which is just a storyline that I'm not a big fan of. When he reveals to her on the roof of what's happening after he has another conversation with future Sid. Now, speaking of future Sid, I will say I completely missed that she was missing half her arm in the season premiere. I think it was, I'll blame it on the lighting and how dark it was, but for whatever reason, I just did not catch that at all. It's obvious, as she relays in this episode, that the future is really, really bad. It's essentially post-apocalyptic because this new threat has essentially killed everybody, as she puts it. As far as effects on her, I also noticed that when she raised her hand right before disappearing again, all of her fingers were black. I know she normally wears gloves. I'm not really sure if that was some kind of covering on her fingers or some kind of physical reaction to whatever's happening in the world. But I wanted to mention it since I completely missed the fact that she was missing part of her arm in the last episode. The other thing that we learned in that scene was the fact that in the original timeline, as far as future Sid is concerned, David kills Farouk a week from present day, bashing his head in. And the reason Sid is doing everything that she's doing is because they need Farouk to battle against this new incoming threat. What exactly this threat is, we still don't know. What she did say was, it started like any other idea, like an egg, which echoes the voiceover that we got in the season premiere when they were talking about delusions. And we've seen that some kind of delusion apparently is infecting David. And he asks her, is he still alive? Because she talks about how she hasn't seen him like this in a long time. So is David the ultimate evil? Does he turn and kill everyone? Right now, he's the only other character aside from Farouk that would seem to have the power to do that much damage. So I'm curious to see if that is indeed the case. And a somewhat related mystery that remains is what exactly is the catalyst, the disease that's turning everyone into chattering statues. It was implied that Farouk was behind all of this, but that is yet to be proven and seems a little too convenient. Especially if we're to believe that David and Farouk were actually working together during this missing year. For now, however, all of this is in the future. The present is the race to find Farouk's body, with David and Farouk, and now apparently Sid, working against everyone else in Division 3 as well, along with their friends. And the key is this monk of the Miko Order, who were involved with hiding his body originally. Now we find out that that order was wiped out on Miser Sunday. So this monk that they're looking for is presumably the last one. And I love, just from a sheer absurdity level that we get with this show, that they just throw out like this Miko Order and Miser Sunday, and they purposely don't talk about it right now. I love how far they're willing to go with this show, with just the sheer lunacy and absurdity of it all. And because they just go at it 100%, they don't hold back ever, it all works. It was just a great world building moment, because this world is presumably our world, but there's just such a weird underbelly to it all that they have so much fun with. And then this was just a prime example of that. Now, of course, we find out that the Miko monk is apparently in the room with all the chattering people within the Division 3. So I'm guessing that's where we're going to pick up in the next episode. And that's pretty much the main plot developments in this episode, except for two minor ones. The first being Clark's growing suspicion of David. He was very supportive of him at the beginning of the first episode, and even talked in his defense when they were considering terminating him when they thought he might be infected. Of course, David is actually working against them, and now Sid is too. And the last one is Melanie's continued melancholy with the departure, kidnapping, whatever you want to call it, of Oliver. She is definitely not well emotionally, and continues to be doing drugs and everything else. So I'm curious to see where they're taking her character. She was very much an in-control person throughout most of the first season, so this is a very different take on her character. Now, there are a few other odds and ends that I wanted to talk about. First being that we actually get to see Farouk for the first time when David mentally projects himself, so they can talk about the fact that Farouk had killed a bunch of people in his infiltration of Division 3, as well as what they're going to do next. And they have sort of a grapple before ultimately coming to an understanding where Farouk promises not to harm any more people in their pursuit of his body. Now, that's the same person that we saw at the beginning of the season premiere when we saw Lenny and Oliver in the pool, and it zooms out through and we see that we're inside this character. At the time we didn't know, and that was actually Farouk. And then we zoom out again and he's in Oliver's body. Now this makes a lot more sense now that we know that apparently Lenny is a separate being. At the beginning of this episode, when David and Oliver are sort of verbally sparring, he refers to Lenny as my associate. That was our first clue. And then later in this episode, Lenny is actually talking to Farouk, saying, hey, you don't need me anymore, let me go. And Farouk says, well, you're dead, but you give me a new body. So that puts a whole new spin on that opening scene where that could actually be the actual Lenny and the actual Oliver trapped within the essence of Farouk, who is inside Oliver's body. That makes perfect sense now, and I can't believe that that moment actually makes sense. That was really cool. What that means for Farouk and Lenny and Oliver moving forward, I don't know. But if Lenny doesn't get what she wants, maybe she could join with Oliver and stage some kind of internal coup. I don't know if either of them have the power to do that. Oliver, maybe. I doubt Lenny. But it's an interesting concept as we go forward. And speaking of moments from early on in the first episode, when we first see the Division 3 exterior and we zoom in, I also missed, like I missed with Sid's missing arm, the weird pointing fingers in the background. The whole scene that we get at the end of this episode is much longer, and we get to see these giant, weird, green pointing hands. What is that? I don't know, but again, the absurdity level I like. I mean, it actually made me think of the anime FLCL, if you've ever seen that. It just had that quality to it. And I love that anime, so it's just another little weird, quirky thing for this show. And the last little bit is the music box, which apparently Farouk used to poke an emotionally sensitive moment with Sid, and she says she doesn't like that. What exactly that music box is, my guess is we'll find out sooner or later. But for now, it's just one more mystery. So that's pretty much everything I can talk about with this episode. The plot itself was pretty straightforward. We actually got some answers, clarifications for some of the mysteries from the first episode, and of course created a bunch more. But that's all we've come to expect from this show. And as always, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. For now, I'm going to turn it over to you. What did you think of this episode? And what do you think of some of my suppositions and observations? Is there anything else I may have missed? Because obviously I missed several things in the first episode. Please comment down below. I'll respond to every one of them. As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some other TV and movie reviews, and until next time, remember, you're the creator of reality.